Here we look at some terms dealing with pressure, specifically two different types of pressure, gauge pressure and absolute pressure. Gauge pressure is just the pressure related to the atmospheric pressure. It's the pressure above or below the atmospheric pressure. And most of you are actually familiar with using gauge pressure. Let's imagine you're driving on the side of the road and you get a flat tire, right? Your tire blows out. Or you pull your bicycle off of a shelf hanging out of your garage and you haven't ridden it all year and the tire's completely flat. When you measure the amount of pressure, we're using a tire gauge, measure the amount of pressure in that tire, you measure there to be 0 psi, 0 pounds per square inch of pressure in that tire, in that flat car tire or in that flat bicycle tire. Well, in reality, no, that can't be. It's in the atmosphere just like you are. It has to have atmospheric pressure inside. It's not a vacuum. Look at a balloon before it's inflated, right? Just buy a balloon not tied off, not blown up. You might think it's tempting to say there's no pressure inside that balloon, but that'd be wrong. There's atmospheric pressure inside that balloon, but there's also atmospheric pressure outside of that balloon. Those two balance, causing the balloon to appear flat. So when you blow up a balloon, or when you inflate a car tire or a bicycle tire with your bicycle pump, the pressure that you read off the bicycle pump or the pressure you read off your tire gauge is the gauge pressure. That's the pressure above atmospheric pressure. Remember, atmospheric pressure is about 14 pounds per square inch. So when you inflate your car tire to 30 psi, that's 30 psi above atmospheric pressure. Now, gauge pressure can also be negative. They can be below atmospheric pressure. Now, we don't have a lot of common issues with gauge pressure being negative. One example that some of you might have experience with is if you've ever microwaved something in a Tupperware container or those Ziploc containers, and the cover gets pushed off as the air inside expands, and we'll talk about the thermodynamics of that in the next section. In Unit 3. But if the cover remains on, as you leave that in the microwave and things cool, the cover gets sealed back on and actually causes the container to shrink a little bit. Because the pressure inside that microwavable container actually is smaller than the atmospheric pressure, causing the atmospheric pressure to crush down. There's a video example that I've posted of this, of a large train car experiencing negative gauge pressure. Now, 0 pressure, right? So the lowest gauge pressure you could be is -1 atmosphere. -1 atmosphere is literally there's 0 absolute pressure in that object. Now the absolute pressure is the sum of the gauge pressure and the atmospheric pressure. So again, if your car tires get inflated to 30 psi and the atmospheric pressure is 14 psi, then the absolute pressure in your car tire is 44 psi. Atmospheric pressure, absolute pressure can't be below 0, of course. Absolute pressure of 0 is a perfect vacuum, where you have no fluid, right? So space can be thought of as negative, of 0 absolute pressure, or -1 atmosphere of gauge pressure. Other terms you might be familiar with as far as pressure, systolic or diastolic pressure, that is respectively the maximum and minimum blood pressure. So if you've ever had your blood pressure taken, you get 2 numbers. One, the top number is your maximum blood pressure, that's the maximum force or pressure your heart pushes blood through your system. And the second is the minimum pressure of your system. High blood pressure is, I think if the systolic is above 140 and the diastolic is above 90, you're considered to have high blood pressure. And then another term, barometer. A barometer is just a device that measures atmospheric pressure. So again, if you go to any weather app that you might have on your phone or watch the Weather Channel, it'll talk about high pressure systems and low pressure systems. Sometimes you can actually get a measurement out of the pressure. Usually in the US, it's inches of mercury. Sometimes it's in bars, but usually it's inches of mercury.